I've been a truck driver for as long as I can remember. And if you asked me the difference between a sailor and a trucker like me, it's pretty simple. It all depends on the ocean we travel. A sailor rides the waves of the sea, but us truckers, we ride the endless highways, our ocean made of asphalt. That's where the comparison ends. It's all about what you're crossing. You see, both sailors and truckers spend most of their lives away from home, meeting new people, facing unexpected challenges, and finding ways to enjoy the solitude. But for us truckers, the sense of freedom is tied to the open road, the changing landscapes, and the thrill of getting from point A to point B, no matter what. I finished high school back in 1985 out in the middle of the Great Plains where I grew up on a farm. But I didn't want to be a farmer. There was something about farming that didn't click with me. Maybe it was the long, repetitive hours or the feeling that I wasn't cut out for that kind of life. So I went to trade school instead. I learned how to drive big trucks, and the school even helped me get a job once I graduated. With the money I had saved, life seemed to be going just like I hoped. My name is Tom, and trucking quickly became my passion. Over time, I saved up a portion of my earnings, all with one goal in mind: owning my own truck. That's where the real opportunity is. Whenever I wasn't on the road, I took local jobs, farm work, short trips, whatever helped me save more. I traveled everywhere, from one end of the US to the other, even down into Mexico and up into Canada, covering almost every corner of the map over my years on the road. I got to see the rolling hills of the Midwest, the dry desert landscapes of Arizona, and the snowy peaks of Colorado. It was like living the ultimate adventure, waking up to new places and new possibilities each day. Eventually, the day came when I had saved enough to buy my own truck. It wasn't brand new, but it was well taken care of and reliable. Growing up on the farm taught me a lot about keeping machinery running, so I used most of my savings to buy it outright. I had just enough left over to make a few customizations and gave her a name: Roadship. People gave me funny looks at first, but once I explained the name, they understood. My truck was my vessel, and the highways were my ocean. As I kept driving long trips, I made a lot of friends along the way. Other truckers who shared advice about routes, shortcuts, and tips for the road. We became a kind of traveling family, watching out for each other. The life of a long-haul trucker is full of adventure, and I loved it. I remember one trip when a sudden snowstorm hit while I was heading south. It covered the road completely, so I pulled off at a truck stop that had everything I needed: fuel, a diner, and a motel. Normally, I'd sleep in my truck, but it was just too cold that night, so I booked a room. Later that night, while I was watching a boring TV show, I heard chaos from the room next door. Turns out, some trucker's wife had caught him with another woman. There was shouting, door slamming, all sorts of noise. I knew the roads would be clear in the morning, so I just waited it out. By 5:30 a.m., I was up, had my truck running, and grabbed breakfast at the diner while it warmed up. Halfway through my meal, the woman from the commotion came up and sat next to me. She introduced herself as Anna. I wasn't really in the mood to talk, but I figured it was better than being alone. Plus, there was something about her. She was easy to talk to. She told me she was trying to get home to Nashville before winter hit. Anna explained the mess from the night before, saying it was all a misunderstanding between the trucker and his wife. She had been traveling with him for 3 days, and even though they were in the same room, they hadn't shared a bed. The room had 2 beds, one for him and one for her. They even convinced the wife that nothing happened by showing her the messed up sheets on both beds. In the end, Anna stayed the night alone. Eventually, things calmed down, but it had clearly been a stressful situation for her. Anna told me she had been hitchhiking across the country for a few months and hoped to be home in a few more weeks. She liked seeing things from a trucker's view and not having to drive herself. She said it was a different kind of freedom, letting the journey take her where it would, and seeing parts of the country she wouldn't have seen otherwise. Curious about my plans, she asked where I was headed. I told her I was going south and offered her a ride. No strings attached. To my surprise, she accepted, and we hit the road together. I knew I'd have to pick up a few tough loads before we reached Nashville, but I didn't mind. The scenery and her company made it worth it. Anna wasn't much trouble either. She paid for most of her own meals, and the only extra cost I had was the showers we rented every few days. We drove together for about 2 weeks, and everything went smoothly. We saw sunrises over open plains, sunsets behind the mountains, and everything in between. We stopped for fuel and food, thinking we'd get back on the road in an hour. Anna said she needed to use the restroom and told me to go back to the truck. She'd meet me in a few minutes. I wandered through the store for a bit, then headed back to the road trip. I noticed the curtains on the doors and windshield were closed, but I didn't think much of it. I got in, and Anna told me she was changing. She asked me to start driving. I barely got the truck moving when she came out of the sleeper cab, half dressed. I wasn't expecting that. She sat down next to me, acting completely normal, and started talking as if nothing strange was happening. I wasn't ready for this. I had heard stories from other truckers about wives, girlfriends, and hitchhikers doing things like this, but I had never experienced it myself. Anna was already a pretty girl when dressed, but like this she was beautiful. Her blonde hair, her cute little nose, and her freckles. She was more than I imagined. We drove for about 2 hours before we found a good place to pull over, a rest area for truckers to take a break. The whole time she stayed beside me, totally comfortable, like nothing was weird. As soon as we stopped, she drew the curtains again, and, well, we spent 2 hours enjoying each other's company. It was the best I'd ever had. The thing that surprised me the most was that nothing had been planned. It just happened. There was something natural about it, as if we'd known each other for much longer than a couple of weeks. It was like we were both caught up in the moment, letting things happen as they would. As we got closer to Nashville, I could tell she was feeling sad. I felt it too, knowing we would probably go our separate ways soon. When it was time to say goodbye, she told me she didn't want me to leave her. She didn't want us to part ways. I wasn't sure what to say. I liked her, but I couldn't see a future for us beyond the physical connection. After one last meal together, we got ready to say goodbye. That's when she told me she thought she was falling in love with me and asked if I really had to leave her behind. I didn't know what to say. I knew I might not find someone like her again anytime soon, but I also knew it might be best if we parted ways. In the end, I gave her my phone number and told her there was a chance she could join me as a co-driver. But first, she needed to go to a 6-month truck driving school to get her commercial driver's license. I promised to come back for her after she finished. She agreed and kept in touch regularly. A couple of weeks after we parted ways, Anna called me with exciting news. She had enrolled in a driving school and promised to keep me updated weekly. After that, our calls got longer and more frequent. We talked about everything, from truck driving details to her experience at school. Anna was eager to learn every part of the job and understand the industry inside and out. She wanted to know what it took to be successful, from dealing with difficult clients to maintaining the truck. But it wasn't just about work. We talked about our personal relationship too. Our conversations got deeper. We shared our goals, our fears, and spoke honestly about our feelings. She wanted to understand me, and I found myself wanting to understand her too. During one of these talks, I was very clear with her. If I was going to be with someone, it had to be just us. I told her I wasn't the kind of guy who could share, especially when it came to being close with someone. Kissing, touching, there couldn't be anyone else. I was a one-woman kind of guy, and I expected the same from her. We started setting boundaries for what we could and couldn't accept in a relationship. It felt good to talk about these things openly, to lay everything out so there would be no misunderstandings down the road. I even told her about my parents and how they'd been together since they were teenagers. My mom was just 16 when they got married, and my dad was 19. They stuck together through thick and thin, and that's what I wanted. To my surprise, Anna agreed with everything I said. Then she talked a little about her own family, 2 younger brothers and a sister. She said she missed them and was looking forward to seeing them again. I opened up more too, talking about my 2 brothers and how we grew up on the farm she had heard so much about. Anna knew my story, but she didn't talk much about her parents, and I wondered if she wasn't very proud of what they did for a living. Still, I knew if we were going to drive together long-term, I'd eventually have to meet them. 5.5 months later, Anna called again. This time she had even better news. She had earned her commercial driver's license. She asked me to come pick her up, and I told her it would take about 3 weeks, give or take a day, since I was 7 states away at the time. During that call, I mentioned wanting to meet her parents and siblings. She wasn't thrilled with the idea, but she agreed to set up a gathering at her parents' house for the first weekend I'd be in town. I got there 2 days early, dropped my trailer at a truck stop, and drove straight to her house. She was definitely surprised to see me early. She lived just outside of Nashville, in a quiet neighborhood. Anna explained that her parents lived about 50 miles away, in the city. Even though she seemed unsure, she called them, and they said it was okay for me to come. So we made plans for 3 days later. As we drove to her parents' place, I noticed we were heading to a really nice area. We entered a gated community with homes that cost a lot of money. When we pulled up in front of a small mansion, I started to feel out of place. Doubts crept in, and I realized I was probably underdressed for this meeting. To make it worse, both of her parents were high-powered lawyers who ran their own business with partners. I wasn't sure if I should go in or leave. It felt really awkward, and I was desperate for a way to handle it. Sensing my hesitation, Anna reassured me. "We're here. It's going to be fine," she said, reminding me that no one was going to bite. She urged me to get out of the car and just be myself. And to my surprise, her parents, despite their wealth and status, were down to earth. They were more concerned about their daughter driving a huge truck across the country than anything else. They were curious about the life we led and how it felt to live on the road, and they asked a lot of questions. So I told them how Anna and I met, sharing stories from our 4-week trip to Nashville. We talked about the money side of owning a truck versus working for someone else, and I talked about the friendships among truckers. I explained how once you make friends on the road, those bonds are strong. Most truckers look out for each other like family. Sure, there are a few bad people, but most truckers are decent folks just trying to do their jobs and get home to their families. To my relief, the day went better than I'd hoped. I really liked her family, and it seemed they liked me too. They were a close-knit family, and I could see where Anna got her strength from. I suggested paying Anna 30% of the load's earnings, which was more than she'd make working for most companies. The rest would cover things like maintenance, fuel, food, showers, and other truck expenses. Her dad suggested we put it all in writing, but I only wanted to do it if Anna was okay with it. She told them she trusted me and said I was the only person she had ever spent that much time with on the road. She assured them I was honest. Her mom, still cautious, left the decision to me. I decided to make it official and told them, "I've got nothing to hide." We signed a contract that explained how each load would be split. I might lose a little money at first, but having a team driver had more advantages, especially since we didn't need to stop as often as solo drivers. Over the next 9 months, Anna and I traveled the highways, sometimes stopping to visit her parents or my family's farm. The road trip had racked up over 2 million miles, and the wear and tear was starting to show. Though I was hesitant, I knew it was time for a new truck. The signs were clear. The old girl was getting tired. With my savings, I managed to make a good deal on a new Peterbilt. Because of my simple lifestyle, I only needed to finance about 25% of the cost. Around this time, Anna asked if we could have a private chat. We sat down, and she suggested something that surprised me. She wanted to cover half the cost of the new truck and go 50-50 on all expenses, an equal partnership with no strings attached. I wasn't against the idea, but since the truck cost about $200,000, I thought it was smart to talk it over with her parents. But Anna wasn't having it. She made it clear that she was old enough to make her own decisions without her parents' approval. I agreed, but insisted we put everything in writing to protect both of us if she changed her mind later. She wasn't thrilled about the paperwork, but she agreed. During this time, our relationship grew stronger, both on and off the road. We were close whenever we could be, and after 9 months of co-driving, we had been together for about 15 months. I cared deeply for her, and I was pretty sure she felt the same. Even when one of us got sick, we made sure the loads were still delivered while taking care of each other. By the time we started our first journey in Road Trip 2, our bond had only grown stronger. One night, as we were driving to California, Anna mumbled that she loved me as she drifted off to sleep. Hearing those words made me stop and think. Was this just what happened when two people spent so much time together, or was it more than that? We had a 3-day break before our next load, so I booked a motel room and rented a car for us to explore the area. On the first day, we acted like carefree teenagers, even fooling around in the back seat of the rental car. By the second day, we were lounging by the motel pool, watching kids play while we relaxed. At some point, Anna leaned over and asked me what I thought about the kids. I told her I wanted to be a dad someday, but I also said I needed to be sure the woman I married could handle the life of a trucker's wife. Her response shocked me. Out of nowhere, she shoved me right out of my chair and into the pool. She stormed off without saying anything, leaving me confused. I sat there trying to figure out what had just happened. Then it hit me. 2 nights ago, I had heard her whisper that she loved me, and now it all made sense. Over the past 17 months, Anna had become everything to me, even though I hadn't fully realized it until now. I hadn't been with anyone else since meeting her in South Dakota, not even when she was in driving school. Determined to make things right, I dried off, went to our room, and cleaned up. Then, without telling her what I was doing, I drove off to find what I needed. 2 hours later, I had it. When I got back, Anna was asleep, her eyes puffy from crying. Making sure not to wake her, I went to the flower shop next to the motel. I bought 6 dozen roses, red, yellow, orange, and purple. The purple ones were the most expensive, but I didn't care. I knew they would be worth it. Back at the room, I took the petals from all but the purple roses and spread them throughout the room. The purple roses went in a vase with a note that read, "To Anna." I know I'm slow to realize things, but it hit me today that we're in love. So I just want to say, I love you. I sat in the front of the room waiting. A few minutes later, I heard her stir. She let out a soft gasp when she saw the petals and the purple roses. As she walked over to them, she started to cry again, but this time with a different emotion. Then she turned, saw me, and before I knew it, we were on the bed together. Anna was always passionate, but this was something new. We spent the next 6 hours together, and sleep wasn't on the agenda. When we finally got tired, we drifted off. But when we woke up, she still had energy, and we had another intimate moment. I couldn't help but think of the old Jackie Gleason line, "How sweet it is." I had to plan ahead, though. Anna's birthday was in 3 weeks, and I wanted us to be back in Nashville to celebrate with her family. I had more surprises in mind. During the 2 hours I was out of the room, I called her parents to arrange a surprise birthday party. I told them about where our relationship was and asked them to make sure the whole family would be there. We arrived in Road Ship 2, driving right into their gated community. The sight of a big truck pulling into such a fancy neighborhood must have turned a few heads, but we didn't mind. We wanted to make an entrance. When we got to her parents' house at 10 a.m., her whole family was already there. It had been almost a year since we had last spent time with them, and I wasn't sure how things would go. I just hoped everything would go as planned. The party was a hit, full of joy and excitement. There were balloons, cake, and laughter filling the air. Around 2 p.m., her dad stood up to make a toast. As soon as the cheers died down, I took my chance. I walked up to Anna, knelt down, and proposed. "Anna, we've been through so much together over the past 2 years. We've traveled the country and become partners, both in life and love," I said, watching her face turn red with emotion. "We're already equal partners in Road Ship 2, so now I'm asking, will you be my life partner and marry me?" Overwhelmed with happiness, she practically tackled me, kissing me over and over. Then with tears in her eyes, she whispered, "Yes." Even though her parents had already given me their blessing, Anna still wanted their approval, and her dad, being the jokester he was, teased her about being a trucker's wife, saying he'd support us both. But I knew how it would end, and I couldn't help but smile. After the celebration, her dad walked her over to me, emphasizing one last time, "Take care of my little girl." I knew I would. After the proposal, we promised to return once her mom had planned everything for the wedding. We stayed in touch with her family every day, even managing to call during times when we didn't have cell service. During those times, we'd stop at truck stops, fuel up, grab a bite, and always make sure to call her parents. Knowing my parents would want to be there, we figured out how to get them to the wedding, even if it meant covering their costs. We wanted them with us. My dad, being a farmer, didn't have much money for things that weren't necessary. Trips to town for supplies were about as fancy as it got. Luckily, Anna and I had already visited them, so they knew her and liked her. That made things a bit easier for everyone. One day I talked with her dad about a prenuptial agreement. I wanted to be clear that it was my idea. I didn't want anyone to think I was after their money or property. It surprised her parents, but after we talked it over, they relaxed. When the time came, I had no problem signing the agreement. I knew in my heart I was doing the right thing, and I was confident Anna felt the same. We exchanged vows at the church Anna grew up in, with her pastor, who had been part of her life since she was a child, officiating. The ceremony was attended by about 200 of her family members, and to my surprise, more than 100 of mine showed up. Our moms teamed up to make sure as many relatives as possible could attend. What blew me away was that her father paid for everything for my family, even booking rooms at a motel nearby just for the event. The reception was held in the motel ballroom. I was amazed by his generosity, knowing how hard he and his wife had worked for everything they had. Later, I found out the wedding cost over $150,000. He said he wanted Anna's wedding to be a once-in-a-lifetime event and spared no expense. I thanked him and made it clear that I hoped it would be her one and only wedding too. I was committed to making it last. Time has flown by, and now, almost 50 years later, Anna and I are celebrating our 49th wedding anniversary. Over the years, we expanded our fleet to 15 trucks, each no more than 5 years old, all proudly displaying the roadship name. Each truck has its own number, so even when we trade them in, there's no confusion. Our family has grown with 7 children and 2 grandchildren, and our business has become a true family operation. Our eldest daughter, Sarah, took over the management of the fleet a few years ago, and she has brought in new ideas that have helped us adapt to modern challenges in the trucking industry. She's got her mother's determination and my love for the open road. Our sons have also joined in, each finding their role within the family business. Michael oversees maintenance, making sure each truck runs as smoothly as possible. He takes pride in keeping our trucks in top shape, just like I did back in the day. Our youngest, Daniel, is following in my footsteps, spending long weeks on the road and enjoying every minute of it. He loves the freedom of the highway, just like I always have. Anna and I have stepped back into semi-retirement, but we still keep an eye on things. We can't help ourselves. Trucking is in our blood. We now spend more time traveling for pleasure rather than for work, visiting places we once passed by on our routes, but never had the time to truly explore. Last summer, we took a trip to Alaska, driving up with one of the newer trucks. It was breathtaking to see the mountains, the wildlife, and the vast open spaces without the pressure of a delivery deadline. Our grandchildren love hearing our stories from the road. They sit wide-eyed as we tell them about the snowstorms, the sunsets, and all the unexpected adventures that come with being a trucker. We hope that one day they'll carry on the legacy, maybe not as truck drivers, but in whatever way they choose to explore the world. The spirit of adventure is something we want to pass down. As we celebrate our 49th anniversary, we're filled with gratitude for the life we've built together. The roadship fleet is still going strong, and our family is closer than ever. Anna and I are even thinking about one last big adventure, driving around the beautiful islands of Hawaii, finally ticking off the last state on our list. It's amazing to think how far we've come, from a chance meeting at a truck stop to building a family and a business that we are so proud of. Here's to the next chapter, whatever it may bring.